steps to throw out the final remnants of the case against Sean Ellis. Nearly 30 years after he was first arrested for a murder, he has always maintained he did not commit, nearly 22 years of which he spent behind bars. For those few who don't know his case, which was chronicled in the Netflix docuseries Trial 4, investigators said Boston Police Detective John Mulligan was on detail and sleeping in his car in front of a Walgreens in Roslindale when he was shot 5 times in the face and killed following a robbery back in '93. Ellis, then 19 years old, was quickly arrested, tried for Mulligan's murder. First 2 trials ended in hung juries, though one jury did convict Ellis of 2 counts of weapons possession. Then in a 3rd trial, he was convicted of murder and first-degree robbery and sentenced to life without parole. But later, 2 Boston police detectives pivotal to the case against Ellis, Walter Robinson and Kenneth Acera, pled guilty to corruption charges, and a 3rd corrupt cop got immunity in exchange for testifying against the others, casting doubt on witness testimony and physical evidence they'd found. In 2015, Sean's murder conviction was overturned, Ellis was released on bail, and a 4th trial was ordered. Then 3 years later, prosecutors dropped the murder and robbery charges, but today the weapons convictions still stand. So Ellis still is a convicted felon. Back in December, his attorneys filed for a new trial on those charges, and last week, Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins responded, asking the judge to grant the new trial so she can then drop the charges. Shortly after, she joined me here on Greater Boston.
Having gone through the long, hard process of looking at everything, it is really just a shameful chapter in our history as law enforcement. I have never seen this level of corruption.
Sean Ellis joins me now, along with his attorneys, Rosemary Scapicchio and Jaleese McDonough. Congratulations to all 3 of you. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sean, what was your immediate reaction when you first heard news of Rollins' decision?
I was definitely happy, and that would be an understatement. But, that happiness is quickly balanced out with the fact that, there's still yet another step because we need to go in front of a judge and have a judge sign off on it. But it definitely brought something to me that finally somebody other than my defense team and those who support me acknowledge what happened in this case. And so, that I'm elated about that.
Let's speak to your defense team. Rosemary, how long have you been on this case?
Over 20 years.
Over 20 years. Did you ever question along the way that this would be the ultimate outcome?
I always believed that I could prove Sean's innocence at some point. I didn't expect that the district attorney's office would join with me and support the motion for a new trial that we filed in this case. And I think it's a huge step forward that it's the first time in 28 years that the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office acknowledged that there was massive corruption in the Boston Police Department in the 90s, in the 2000s, and it needs to be addressed. And we're hopeful that now that this acknowledgement has been made and filed with the court, that there will be some institution that looks into any conviction that included Sarah Robinson, Brazel, Mulligan, or Detective Keeler, and anyone else who was involved in the wrongful conviction of Sean Ellis. We're hopeful that it will enlarge to looking at all of the convictions. The other officers that were in that unit had to have known what was going on and did nothing about it.
I want to get back to that possibility in a second. Jaleese, Sean mentioned a minute ago that this, is not formally over. Obviously, it's before a judge. Is there any chance the judge in this case would not grant the motion in light of the fact there's this unusual circumstance where both sides are seeking the same thing?
I think it's hard to predict. It's completely within his purview to review everything. We think we put forth a strong case that Sean should be relieved of this conviction at this point because all of the corruption that infected his murder trial affected the gun conviction as well. And we think that District Attorney Rollins really put forth a strong statement in support of our motion for new trial.
Sean, when you were first convicted and sentenced to life, which was 26 long years ago, Did you think you'd die in jail?
That's what I was sentenced to, Jim. And that's something that I had to live every day of the time that I spent in prison, thinking about. And is part of what was driving me. I didn't want to resign to that fact, but it's what I was sentenced to.
How'd you wake up every day and go through the day knowing you might spend the rest of your life in a cage for something you didn't do? How did you get through every day for those 22 years?
I basically didn't have a choice. Is the only other choice was just to lay down and sit down, and I'll allow the railroading that happened to me to exist, or the other choice was to try to advocate for myself and get somebody that believed in me to help with the advocacy, and fortunate enough for myself, I got both Rosemary and Jaleese to help from that perspective.
Or did you ever? Rosemary, I want to get back to what you said about the first time in decades that this district attorney's office has acknowledged something like this. In the motion for a new trial, among the things that
Now keep in mind, Otho Wallace and this guy has the same attorney by the name of Rosemary.
Rollins said was there was egregious police corruption and prosecutorial misconduct. These were disgraceful chapters in our history. Despite saying that was not unanimous. As you know, in December of 2018, when the decision was made by the interim district attorney there not to proceed with a fourth murder trial, here's what the then commissioner of police, Willie Gross, had to say.
Sean Ellis is culpable. What does the evidence look like after 25 years? The witnesses and the strength. And the decision was based upon that. Not innocent at all.
And then last week, Rosemary, the acting police commissioner, Gregory Long, said 3 detectives not only disgraced themselves, but unfortunately their conduct was used to tarnish the reputation of the entire department. The department does not and will not tolerate corruption. Recognizing the issues that surround this case, the department's belief remains the same, that there was sufficient credible evidence to support a conviction for illegal firearms possession. Despite what acting Commissioner Long said when he says they don't tolerate corruption, it appears they do tolerate corruption and defend it. Is that not what they're saying in this case?
That's exactly what they're saying. And in order to actually have some progress forward in this case, they have to acknowledge there was a problem. And what they did is sort of a backhand slap and say, yep, there were these 3 cops, they were rogues, and they had some problems, but nothing else is wrong with our department, and we stand behind a conviction that a Superior Court judge, 7 members of the SJC, and now a new district attorney have all looked at and said that Sean should not have been convicted, that he didn't get a fair trial, and that the evidence of corruption infected the entire trial. But as they continue, the problem with the Boston Police Department is every time they deny the existence of the corruption and deny that the corruption affects criminal cases in which they're involved, then they don't have to take any responsibility for that, because they can take a step back and say, we think he did it like Commissioner Gross did, or we still believe in the conviction. You can't still believe in the conviction if you understand that there's corruption that caused the conviction. You can't have it both ways. So you're either going to believe in the corruption or you're not. And they're wishy-washy on this, as they always are, so that